question is for anyone that wants to jump in. What is the best piece of advice you have received, or what advice would you have liked to have had before starting your journeys?
I shared this in my presentation. I wouldn't be where I am right now with my business if it wasn't for the fact that I said thank you, handwritten thank you, and holiday cards. I can't tell you how far a thank you note, especially right now with world, how people are hurting. You don't know how much that little gesture can really impact the life of someone, and that really helps you with your career, with your business.
I think, and I talked a little bit in a session before that being a Sikh is a big part of my identity as a way of life. But what it does is the idea that you go into the world and you embrace different religions and imagine it's your own, and live it completely, so that you can have a better understanding of our humanity and the many ways that we express our traditions and one of those traditions that I really started to embrace was Buddhism. And I kind of consider myself more of a Sikh Buddhist than anything else. And Alison and I have talked a lot about this, and
fellow Buddhist,
and talk about practicing mindfulness, but also listening to. I got to work with a program with the Dalai, not with the Dalai Lama, but the Dalai Lama was part of it. And so one of the biggest things that we can be is never to have too much pride. And when we do, is to practice humility. But humility is an opportunity to learn. When we practice humility, it means that we remain constantly open, that we don't know everything of everything. And there's only so much we do know. But when we open our minds up to a humble mind, then we open ourselves up to continually learning in the process and the journey that we're on. And it also helps to remove some of that ego and that pride that stops us from the ability to build relationships and the ability to be able to continue to learn. I don't know everything. I'm not the greatest. I don't have everything. But when you have that open mind, a humility mind, that means that you could always, any opportunity in every person, however young or however old, is someone that you can learn something from, because they have a unique way of seeing the world. So I think that part, through the practice of Buddhism, giving me that chance to learn that has been really beneficial to me.
I received some advice from a boss. He was doing my evaluation. He called me in, and it was a very good evaluation. He said, "But I have one piece of advice for you. Dare to do." He said, "You're doing great stuff, but you're holding back. You're not taking the risk because you've got a lot of potential to be able to do other things." And I've never forgotten that ever. And I've had opportunities in front of me to make big decisions. And I'll use the word, you have to be bold and courageous to do that. And as I told my group this morning, you won't know if you don't go. So dare to do.
Best piece of advice I've ever been given was from my family, and they never said it to me. They showed me. And it was that there's never an empty seat at our table. We always had somebody in our home. I never know who was going to be at the dinner table when I walked in the door home from school. And there was constantly somebody from another country, from another religion, from another belief system, from all over the place that was at our house for dinner. And there are two things that came out of that. One is that when you eat a meal with somebody, there's something sacred that happens there. You're breaking bread, you're communing together. When you eat a meal with somebody, that is a special thing. And it's also a way for you to learn somebody else's culture, learn about their food, learn about their life, where they come from. And the second part is that you're always thinking about being a host, being a hostess, being hospitable. And that is thinking more about somebody else than yourself. Where are you? What's going on in your life? Tell me your story. What can I do for you to serve you? So I hope that I'm modeling that for our family as well, that there's always somebody new at our dinner table, always somebody new showing up to our house. But it's the best piece of advice I've ever been given, and it's never failed me to eat food with somebody and serve them, be a host and hostess, and be hospitable.
Thank you. I'm going to direct this next one to Caitlin and Jose, just because I happen to follow you both on social media, and I know the list of things you don't do is shorter than the list of things that you do. So, and of course, but anybody else is free to answer too. But this question is, what helps you find or make the time to tell, write, share your stories while working a day job or working on other projects?
You got side hustle written on your apron, so you have to start.
Wait, can you say the middle part again? I was very much listening intently, but that's a tricky one.
What helps you find or make the time to tell, write, share your stories?
So I'm a ranter. I like to get on Instagram Live and like let it rip, either while I'm making cookies or while I'm doing something else. I listen to motivational audiobooks as well while I'm decorating cookies. History, biographies. Glennon Doyle's Untamed is unbelievable. If you haven't listened to that one prompted a rant. Also my husband, he likes to be in the background. My husband is white and I am biracial, and he lets me take center stage and be in the spotlight and do all of the things that I want to do or strive to do. He's like constantly pushing me, and so he's also reminding me constantly to document what I'm doing and to be present and to be mindful in my life. And I'm eternally grateful, because I said it in my session, like I will forget to wash my hair and do my laundry. Like I won't take care of myself. The hospitality, the hospitable behavior, like I embody it to a fault sometimes. And so, you know, he helps me, as well as these authors and just regular people that I follow on social media that are like bold and out there, and I'm just trying to follow suit and do the best that I can with that as well.
I think we have fallen into the trap of thinking we have to be super narrowly focused on a specific thing. I think the idea of a Renaissance man or woman is kind of lost in this society, where we're really pushed into, well, you have to be this exact super narrow specific thing. And as human beings, we have a lot of different interests. I mean, look at this table, this crowd here. Look at this crowd here. We all have amazing, varied interests, and we should explore those and try different things. And that's what I love about the social media connected world, is sharing these stories and finding something that's interesting to you. And if it's interesting to you, pursue it and see where it goes. Not every job has to be a hobby, and not every hobby has to be a job. Try things out, see what you like. And the second part of that is content. On the content side, just document. Don't feel like you have to create an amazing story or a well-worded post, or what are people going to think about if I share this or that. Document it. That's really the best way to create content out of all of your interests, is just share it. And don't feel like you have to fit a certain mold or push it all into one specific thing. So try lots of different things, and then just document it. Don't worry about the necessarily how polished the content is. Just share it.
So this next question is for Valentina, and then if anyone else has thoughts and would like to jump in, you can. How do I, someone who hates social media, make it fun to use/promote myself?
That's a really good question, and it kind of ties in with what Jose said, that don't be expect perfection. Just do it. That's what's I've seen that for the 9 years that I've been in business. I can't tell you how many women and men too. They don't take the initiative. They're like, I want to get this and this and this done before I start my business or I do something. Just do it. You know, we're trying to be authentic, be who you are. If it's not perfect, I'm not perfect. I have my Miami accent. I've learned to embrace it. I think one of the things, the first people I met was Jose when I first moved here. And And talking to him, you're so lucky, by the way, because he's your dad. But it's like you have to embrace who you are and just get started. If you attended my session, and if you didn't, I could definitely connect with me. But just do it. Just get started. Think about your brand. Think how it aligns with who you are, and just put yourself out there. I don't know what else to say. If you want, reach out to me, and I'll be glad to help you. Anyone else?
What she said, yes.
Well, you go.
Just want to keep talking. So I'm new to TikTok and I don't post often, but I love to like watch Clean Talk and all of these things that are very cathartic to me. But they have these like challenges where it's like take 32 photos and put it in a post and it'll set it to music, and it's like watching a flashback of your life. That is a lot of fun to watch, and then you also, don't realize what all you've done. So just putting something on social media and having it there is like having a photo album of your life or your project or your passion. And so even if it's not, even if you have 2 followers, it doesn't matter. Using your hashtags and stuff and things that you're passionate about will connect you to other people, and then it will be fun because you're creating like this network of folks that you can reach out to and have common ground with, and I think that that's what makes it really fun.
Create more content. Just take photos. That's the other thing. Just take photos. I think for me, going back through and looking at, this is now 20 years. That's all right. 20 years of taking photos is I now have a record of what I've done and what I've seen and that's amazing to me to be able to have that. So even if you're not posting them publicly, take your phone and take a photo a day just of capturing where you are in the moment, and you will appreciate that as you go down the line. It's about capturing it for yourself too.
Liv, do you want to go?
You're speaking, go
Oh,
ahead.
okay.
You're first.
I guess for me, I think it's similar to the approach of like giving a talk on the stage, or you get invited to go and give a talk at a conference, lead a workshop, or give a plenary, and I get nervous. I always get nervous, but I say a little. Now everyone can do it differently. I personally say a little prayer to myself before I go on and say, it's not about you. This is about something that you're trying to create, or something that you're trying to move, or inspire people to action. It's about the greater story that's out there. And you're just a channel. Okay? It's about doing justice to that story. The justice that needs to be, the story that needs to be told. It's just, you're just a channel. And I think the same with social media is the intention. Is it about promoting you, or is it about promoting an idea that you think is important for justice, for truth, for unpacking, to challenge, to disrupt? And these are the things that, we think about what is the greater cause. If we're trying to create a society that's fairer and more equal and more just, then it's our duty to go on social media in any formats that we have and to share and to reveal and to unearth the stories that need to be told. So it's not about promoting you, it's about promoting the cause that we're connected to. That makes sense.
I'd like to add something that Valentina said that's so important. And this is going to be a little bit different take. We're talking about social media, but let's talk about your communication with people you love and that are influential in your life and that you come in contact with. Write something personal to them. I talked to a young lady not too long ago who said was estranged from her father. And she said to me, I don't even know what his handwriting looks like. We do this all the time, and this is great. This is a communication tool that we have. But what are we going to do with the National Archives in 50 years when we don't have the papers and the letters and the journals from people who are making such a difference in our world? So don't forget that part too, because your handwriting is a personal connection with someone else. I do exactly that. I write little note cards, and if I had some interaction with somebody or saw somebody do something, I'll just do a little handwritten note. Our president of the ETSU does the same thing too. I get notes from Dr. Brian Nolan, and I'm going like, oh my gosh, he took his time to write me. make it convenient, have some on hand, have some stamps, do that. I know it's old stuff, but it is a connection, and that person sees your handwriting and your words that come to them. And it makes a difference, a huge difference. So don't forget, write letters to people who are really important to you. I have letters from my mother, who's now deceased, and I just get them out and read them a lot. They're really cool, so don't forget that too.
Thanks. I just leaned over to Stella and I was like, text me on Tuesday, remind me to write thank you notes. Addison, I'm going to start with you on this one, and then, of course, open it up to whoever. But what do you think is unique to the work being done in Appalachia compared to other areas?
Well, storytelling is definitely unique, and I did not realize that everybody wasn't a storyteller. You know, I grew up listening to my grandparents and my dad, who was a wonderful storyteller, but I just thought, that's my dad, that's what he does. I didn't realize that it's sort of a cultural gift from Appalachia to be able to hear stories. And now he's been dead now for a number of years, but those stories are still in my head. And when I think of them, I remember where I was. I remember evenings and the stars and the front porch and how it made me feel to hear the stories. It's almost like you can taste it or feel it. And writing notes, my dad was a person who had a 6th grade education. And he always felt bad about himself because of that. But I've kept all of his letters that he would write me when I went away to school, and he would write me these little notes, and he would remind me about things. Even now, you know, they feel like a personal part of him still with me. My mother was a wonderful storyteller. My dad would be the one, his method of making us stay in bed at night, I heard someone mention ghost stories. He would tell us ghost stories. He would turn out all the lights in the house, and just before we went to bed, he would tell a ghost story. Guess what? We never got up during the night. So it was a great control mechanism. So I think too, Appalachia has always been known for its resources, and I'd like to think that now maybe the residents of Appalachia are beginning to appreciate Appalachia more. Because when I was growing up, it was not the place you wanted to stay. It was the place you were trying to escape from. And so I think now more people are coming to the region than are actually leaving. So that's what I see.
Anyone else? I've got something to add to that. Adding on to what you just said, I went to Science Hill High School. I graduated in 2006. My husband Blake, he's born and raised in Washington County. He went to all sorts of schools. His mom was an educator. We've stayed. I never moved away and came back. I've had friends that have moved to Nashville, you know, big city. They've come back. Whether it's because they had a bunch of children and their families here, and childcare is certainly, you know, very expensive in a city like that. And I think you're very right that the appreciation for this region is blossoming right now, and it's just really, it's tangible and it's trendy. I hate to say that, but it is. You know, embracing the twang. My dad was an educator as well, so I don't have that much of an accent because he was all about diction. But embracing everything and being here, and I get thanked a lot by friends that I went to school with, or that my husband, his peers, he's a little bit older than me, they're like, you know, thank you so much in my little Instagram DMs or whatever. Thank you for doing what you're doing in the community and trying to make our hometown like better than what it is, or putting your stamp on it, because I'm enjoying watching what you're doing and I can't wait to come back and visit. And it just means a lot to be a steward of the Appalachian region, and so we do take pride in that.
There's one word I think of when I think about Appalachia, and that's pioneer, the pioneer spirit. I think there is something about this place that from the time that indigenous people were here all the way up until now, people that live in the mountains have to work harder.
Yes.
They've got to, cut the fields into the side of the mountain. They have to carve out their own piece. And there's something about the spirit of the people that move here, even now to this day, that is a pioneer spirit. And that encourages me because it is welcoming, it is hospitable, but it's also, we're going to work together on some stuff. And so I think now more than ever, the pioneer spirit is still alive and strong, and I'm excited to be a part of that.
Let me add some specificity to that, Jose. I call the people of Appalachia, let's go back in history. I mean, just downright scrappy. Think of the Over Mountain Men. Anybody know those folks? They gathered in Elizabeth at Sycamore Shoals, hiked all the way to Kings Mountain for 30 days, over the mountains of Roan Mountain and down into South Carolina, and defeated the British and changed the history of the American Revolution. So this region has so much history and so much power of what has happened to this country. And it's all because I think of the scrappy nature of can-do attitude that even though we've just come off our farms and dead tired, we're going to walk all the way to South Carolina and find a ammunition British group and change history.
Those damn Brits.
I forgot all about that
And
dynamic.
we're back, and we're brown. Something that Alistine, we had a conversation about this, and this is something, and I class this as a new Appalachian myself. But it was when Ibrahim Kendi had come out with a publication in the Boston Globe, and they called it The Emancipator. And it was on national NPR. And I contacted the Boston Globe and Ibrahim Kendi's group at the Boston University. I said, do you know the Emancipator came from Jonesboro, Tennessee?
Right here.
And I love the way you said it. It's like, we have to teach the Yankees something about it. They think the anti-racism movement began in the North. It began right here in
It
Appalachia.
began in the South. It
So-
began in Appalachia,
Yeah.
which was always intercultural.
Right.
Yeah. And
And I-
multiracial.
And I like it. I think it was not Robert Guy, but who's the other literature? Okay, Appalachia always been a historically triracial
Right.
community.
Right.
But imagine if Appalachia was to disappear, what would we lose? Imagine if Appalachia never existed, what would the world never know? And think about those two things, and we come up with our own ideas about social movements, the history of protests, pioneerism but resilience.
Racial mixing.
Yeah.
It started here. This has always been a racially diverse area. And it isn't till you get on the other side of the mountain and go north that the Yankees begin to change things. But anyway, we'll leave it there.
I just have to add that Elihu Embry, who wrote The Emancipator, was a hypocrite. And I refuse to blow so much smoke on that story because he was a white man writing about abolition, but he refused to free his slaves until he died.
I could counter that argument.
Now I'm scared.
I could say, if he freed them, then what? What happens to the freedmen?
Oh.
Oh.
Jonesboro was a very progressive place.
So this idea of, and this is again when we don't teach history properly, what happens to is a free black man in America different from an enslaved black man in America?
I think we're all scared to answer.
I'm very scared.
In that time period, probably not.
No, there's no difference. So even though you have your freedom, if you're not recognized as a citizen, who protects you? Nobody.
Touche.
So Well, I used to teach this, so I'll give you a break.
And for more information on that particular subject, you can visit our Freedom Stories website, where we have a whole host of information about it. But no, I mean, that's great, but cool. Okay, we're gonna move on to our next question. No, thanks, this is excellent.
All right, so this is a little bit of a fun one. And of course, earlier we said just how big Appalachia is. But if you could go anywhere in the world, where would you go?
I would say NY.
Yeah, and why?
I'm adding NY.
The mountains of Italy. Yeah, they grow wine. They don't call it moonshine, but they do a lot of alcohol production, which Appalachia gets credit for. It's beautiful. The people are very community oriented. They sing and tell stories. So it has a lot of similarities. Now, I've been fortunate to be able to travel and spend some time in Italy, and if I ever had to leave the country, that's where I would settle.
That is a loaded question. So on the side, as a side hustle, I sell a unique collection, which is fair trade jewelry. I would love to visit the artisans that make the jewelry that I'm wearing, like in Uganda, East Asia. These women are leaving trafficking situations, and Noonday's provided job opportunities through training with like job skills like Microsoft Office, graphic design. So I would love to visit those artisans, and we have 15 artisan groups, 15 countries. So just to see those artisans and know their stories, just get to know them better. That's where I would love to go.
I think Iceland. I love Icelandic music. But I think also back in time, I'd love to know, my family left 3 generations ago the villages of northern India and were migrant workers to East Africa, and then were political refugees to come to England. So everything I know is through stories, passed down to me through 3 generations. But I'd love to go back in time to the original village where my family lived in northern India, rural parts, for hundreds of years. I'd love to go back and see what that was like, and to feel it, to imagine it, to be with my ancestors and to connect with my ancestors. That's where I'd like to go.
That's cool.
I would like to go, I have a bucket list of, so first of all 50 states. But I really want to see all of the national parks. I'm a stalker of the U.S. Interior Department. Follow them on Instagram, it's really cool. But out west, like the furthest west I've ever been, I actually just went this year. I went to Memphis, and then I went to New Orleans with my husband, but I'm pretty paranoid about leaving my bubble. It's kind of sad, but I'm dying to see, all of the Monument Valley and all of that out there.
Go to Grand Tetons.
There too, Crater
It's
Lake,
so beautiful.
everywhere.
Yeah, go to Yellowstone too.
They're on the list.
Gosh, I could just repeat everything everybody said already. I've lived overseas. I lived in Southeast Asia for a couple of years, and it was an amazing experience. Of the countries I visited out there, which were most of them, the place I would want to go back to there is probably Vietnam. It was a gorgeous, gorgeous country. The people were amazing. They've just been occupied their almost entire existence, but lots of humor, lots of laughter, lots of optimism in a time where you still saw bomb craters and old war equipment that we left behind and all that. But Vietnam has the largest coastline of any country in Southeast Asia, so if they really focused on tourism and that, it would be amazing. But I kind of go back to what Caitlin is saying. My husband and I both have said, what do we want to do now? Since we've been all over the world. I've been around the world twice, actually, in a continuous trip. It's here. I mean, it literally is here. And one of the greatest trips I've ever taken from Dallas, Texas, back here, where I lived in Dallas before we retired and came back, was not getting on a single interstate.
Cool.
And going through all the little small towns, coming up the Natchez Trace Parkway, stopping at the information place and watching the movies that are in there to see how our forefathers made this country. to see the difficulty in floating down the Mississippi River to take all of their products and then walking back to Nashville on the Natchez Trace. I mean, it's just amazing. It is a beautiful country. The diversity here is just so incredible that we all ought to enjoy it. So, Karen, to your point too, going back, if we could go back in time, you know, like they do on Outlander for those who watch that. At what crossroad would we stop? The crossroad, would we stop and say, from this point on, we kind of got it wrong. Let's see if we can get it right again, so that we have dealt with a much more humane immigration acceptance of how, I mean, we are the world. And so I don't know where that crossroad would be, that all of a sudden it started kind of getting hard and bitter and wars and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, but the United States.
My friend Jenny stole my thunder. The more I travel around the world, the more I love coming back here. And I would encourage you to spread your wings and go somewhere you've never been. But man, seriously, the more I travel, the more I love coming home to the mountains here. And it gives me a better appreciation for it. But as a Castillo, I would have to go to Spain. It's still one of the European countries I've not visited. I've been everywhere else around it, but I've never been to Spain. My whole family has been there except for me. So
I have, and the food is great.
I know. But I'm seventh generation Jose Castillo, and I've never visited my original homeland. So I would love to go visit the Castillo region in Spain.
You better take me with you.
I'm taking you with me, Sophia. You're coming
You
with
need
me.
to take him.
Come on, we'll go together.
It's a good graduation present.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Ah.
There you go. Yes, España es muy bonita. So when we had our participants register for this event, one of the questions that we asked, along with all of their demographic information, was, in your opinion, what are 3 pressing issues facing Appalachian youth? We took those answers and turned them into this Wordle or tag cloud or whatever it is you want to call it. And the top 4 answers were racial injustice, poverty or low-paying jobs, a lack of education, and environmental damage. So if these are the 3 pressing issues facing Appalachian youth, I guess what would your response be to how we might address these?
Well, I'll speak from an elected leader position. These are all things, and honestly, you nailed it. And I told my group this morning, we're leaving you a bucket load of problems, my generation. It has to be your civic engagement to get behind these issues, to be able to influence to a point. But only if you get in positions of elected leadership where you can begin to turn the tides with decisions that are made on how we invest in this country. Every one of the things that have been mentioned right here require investment. And so politically, you have groups of leaders who, one group will want to deny that anything's going on climate change. It's a hoax. It's made up by the other party to try to get all this money to go into different infrastructure. And then on the other hand, it's the capacity to address all of these issues simultaneously, because it's a big, big endeavor. I think there has to be a lot of grassroots beginnings to communicate on an ongoing basis with your elected leaders all the time in a way that can get their attention. And so learn as much as you can about these issues. Become very smart, because I promise you this, you will be smarter than your elected leaders on these issues. I promise you this,
Yes.
right? And so it's going to take tenacity. We're going to probably have, with what we've been having now in these storms and the superstorms, it's finally starting to get some attention. But it will go on for a lot longer. But you have to get engaged, you have to get involved, you have to know your elected leaders, know every one of their names. of people who represent you at the local level, at the state level, at the national level. These are just, as we talked this morning, we govern ourselves. We govern ourselves. Any one of you can be an elected leader. Then you're going to have to govern, and you're going to have to deal with these issues. Get to know them. Basically, they work for you. They work for the constituents. So get to know them and try to influence them as well. The other thing I would say too, look at your own communities too, and look at these different aspects that have just been mentioned, these 4 areas, and get some background on each one of them to say, here's the impact right here in Boone, North Carolina. You know, for unemployment, for underemployment, for undereducation. This is the impact. So have your facts together and really kind of build that case on how you can be an influencer. And good luck.
To add to that, and this is perfect, because I believe that it's a combination of government and civic focus, but also private sector. As an entrepreneur, somebody who started multiple businesses, and especially in this region, I feel very strongly that we need to educate folks on the fact that they can run their own business and that they can be their own boss, and that should be something that is, you know, trumpeted louder, and that we need to support that, because we're living now in a day and age when really you can have a global business wherever you are in the world, even from right here, and especially from right here. Because of where we live, we have a leg up on the rest of the world. So I would encourage you as well to know that you can change things from the government and civic side, you can change things from the private sector side. And you can do that by starting companies and things that you're passionate about. And guess what? You can start a company right now. You don't have to wait on anybody to tell you when you can do it and how you can do it. So jump into the marketplace and be passionate and sell the things and work on the things that you're excited about and that you love. And you can change the world through that. You can.
I would just like to say I've worked in government for 20 years, and Jenny is so right. You would be surprised what one letter from a constituent will do. You think that you have to have large numbers, but really it's your commitment to holding your elected official accountable that really turns the wheel. And if you are knowledgeable and if you take the time to really become a citizen, democracy only works if we make it work. There are lots of people who will take your freedoms away and take your choices away if you are not actively engaged in letting them know you're paying attention. Much of what happens in our country is because we've delegated that responsibility to a lot of people, and we've trusted that they have our best interests at heart, and that may or may not be true. So if you're gonna call yourself an American citizen, that comes with some responsibilities, and that means paying attention to who you elect and why you elect, and let them know that you're not afraid to remove them. And this is from the state of Kentucky, where we've had a congressman there for 30 plus years, so yeah. We will, no names mentioned here.
I just want to speak to the racial injustice portion of it. I marched with some of you last summer. I'm very vocal. I'm older than you all, but because of being a good community servant, being engaged with my community, being honest, being an entrepreneur and a business owner, I was able to sit down, having respect also. Sometimes you gotta just bite your tongue, grin and bear it, and get in the room. Like I said earlier, get in the room and then drop the hammer. You know, you can't do anything just screaming. You said it all the time. You know, we can't accomplish anything if we're all just on the corner screaming at each other or just yelling. We were able to have sit-down meetings with the chief of police and get policies changed. You know, it's more than just what's after the protest. So have a plan, have responsible parties that you can trust that aren't gonna go and cuss out your officials, your elected officials, and you know, because that will completely shut everything down, and then you're moving backwards. You know, social media, I'm a ranter, I've said all kinds of things. But face to face, I'm able to be extremely respectful. I have history. She knows my father-in-law who's deceased. I never got to meet him. She's met him. You taught my brother how to play golf through the First Tee program. Find connections with your especially local elected officials because they're there. You just have to find those degrees of separation to find a personal connection with them, to be able to go up and approach them. I went to the sesquicentennial. I sat at the table with you, met you for the first time, and I told Blake, I was like, I'm going to go and introduce myself to then Mayor Jenny Brock. And I walked up to you, and you recognized me because I look like my dad, who always sings the national anthem at the turkey trot every year. So it's like, you got to know.
6 degrees of separation.
Yeah, like there's 3 right there. But just remember that you really do. I mean, it's a testimony. You do hold some power, and so use your voice, but make sure that you're methodical about how you do that.
So I think all these issues are really interconnected: racial justice, climate, poverty. There's a cycle, and knowing and seeing it is interrelated. Issues around persistent poverty. Why has there been persistent poverty for hundreds of years, and why is that cycle so difficult to break? Why is the opioid epidemic so prevalent in poverty regions? Why is there such health disparity that exists in particular regions, and that health disparity gap is growing? And why is it during a pandemic that we see disproportionate numbers of people of color affected, right? So they're all interrelated. They're all interrelated issues. Climate is this big wave that's approaching us, and it's here, and it's now, and people don't understand it, and it's going to affect all of us. It's going to affect our future. But I also see, and I back up everything that, this idea of starting now, this idea of getting into becoming an elected official, but there's also a real value in listening and waiting, being patient, mobilizing, getting to know your people, getting to know your group, maybe perhaps not starting a non-profit or a business, but contributing to one. And I'll give you one example. You all know who Bob Marley is. You know how amazing Bob Marley is. You know about, if you listen to Exodus, Movement of Jah People, or if you listen to Buffalo Soldier, what these songs were about, and when he talks about injustice, inequality, and every song is a story that I listened to when I was 8 years old, and I read the back of the lyrics of his albums, and I started to understand the world from a bigger perspective, and he was an activist. But when I was an adult, I got to meet one of his friends, and one of his friends I got to hang out with for a little while, and he told me when Bob Marley was young, he would stay in his London apartment. He was an elder Rastafarian. He would stay in his apartment. Anyone from Jamaica would come to London, they would stay in his house. And he said Bob Marley was the quietest, introverted, shyest human being as a kid, as a young adult. But what he was doing was continually listening, and he would listen to some of the elders speaking about injustice, about politics, about inequality. And he'd listen, he was quiet, he was an introvert. And years later, he brought it out in his music. He found his niche. He found what he was good at. And he took the listening, the observations, until it felt right for him. Now I need to cultivate my channels in this particular space. And Bob Marley impacted me and millions of people around the world. And I think there's real value in going forth in it. But remember, the best movements start from the grassroots up. You have to cultivate that movement. You're never alone. Your community's out there. Connect with your community. Find your people. Build collective momentum. Continue to learn and shift the narrative from the inside. Push it to the direction you need to push it in. You don't have to do it alone, because you're not.
All right, we're gonna wrap up our panel time, but we want to invite you all to make any closing thoughts. If you have anything else you want to leave us with.
I was just going to say, live fearlessly. Go out there, do it. If you're passionate about something, go for it. Research it thoroughly first, but every aspect, know it inside, outside, sideways. Just embody what you are passionate about, and then be about that life. You can do anything, really. I'm finding that out, and I'm here for it. And nobody can stop me.
I love Caitlin. We really got close this past summer for sure.
We did.
To you guys, here's the way I look at you. You are 100% of our future. This is all going to be yours. So get engaged, decide what you're going to do with it. As Karen said, I really liked what you just said about how Bob Marley found his niche and how and you can find yours as well. Stay engaged. That's one of the big things. And just remember, I'm an elected leader, but I'm a grandmother, you know? And that's the neat thing about our country is that we're self-governed by just any of us and all of us. Don't be afraid of your elected officials. I mean, sometimes I think people get in office and they become a different species, you know? It's like, you know, what species is that? Oh my God. You have to engage with them and they're just your neighbors, you know? So anyway, good luck, and anytime y'all need any follow-up or anything, you can find me on the Johnson City website. I'd love to have your emails or phone calls.
You are the only one that has ever existed in the history of the world exactly like you. You are the rarest ingredient in the world. And it is your duty to share your secret ingredient with everyone else. And I would encourage you to find out what that is, why you're put on this planet, and then share it with other people. That is your charge coming out of here. Find out what your flavor is and share it with the world.
I just want to say to get involved in the community. When I first moved here from Florida, I was involved with so many different organizations and nonprofits, and I learned a lot about the need. I'm on the board for the food bank here. I understand how bad the food need is in this area. I'm involved with Rotary, and it's funny, we talked about the opioid crisis. There's people in Asia fundraising to help end the opioid crisis here in Appalachia. So I learned that in Rotary. So get involved, and you never know how that can open doors with people as well. So just get involved in the community. There's such a big need, and we need your help.
I could just echo what everyone else has said, and the idea of staying in place. Don't feel as though you have to leave the region to make a difference, that you have to travel to some other major city outside of where you are. You can really make a difference right where you are, right where you're planted, and that people will listen. We are leaving you a mess, I agree, but I think it's one that you can manage. I have confidence in young people. I've seen how creative and inventive you are, and when you've made up your mind to change things, how it happens. So I would just say tap into that energy and keep it right here with you if it's your desire to stay in the mountains.
I guess one piece of advice is my dad always said to me, if you don't know where to start, wash the dishes. It was kind of his way to get me to wash the dishes. And it worked. But he was right. And basically, if you don't know where to start, the world seems so massive, the issue seems so big. But we always start with one bit at a time, one story at a time, one movement at a time, one meal to this neighbor at a time, one action. And it always starts in this process, and it's a little bit goes a long way, and it creates this ripple effect. So if you don't know where to start, wash the dishes, but it means just listen to a movement, check it out online, find a person, meet your community, and sometimes look to the elders, but look to your own people of your own age. Greta Thunberg, Malala Yousafzai, Emma Gonzalez, many of the young people that are already doing that. Your inspiration is in your generation. You're the smartest generation the world has ever known. You know how to do it, and you care about the issues more than I think any other generation. So you are the smartest generation. Connect with your people because you know how to do it.
Thank you all so much. Excellent.
All right.